and welcome to this episode of the Selling Through Partnering Skills podcast, where I am delighted to be joined by Ian Mahag. I did say that correctly, didn't I,
You
Ian?
did. Very good. 9 out of 10.
Oh, well, I'm very aware of people's surnames.
Yeah.
Mine gets turned into all sorts. So Ian, well, he's told me he's a retired salesman of 40 years and author of The Unintentional Salesman. And I said,
Yeah.
well, in your author of Unintentional Salesman role, you are anything but retired because you put so much content
Yeah.
out, which is so interesting,
Yeah.
which is why I wanted to talk to you. So Ian, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Fred. It's always nice to catch up with people as close as we can in real life these days, having exchanged many messages through LinkedIn and find that we are probably thinking about the world in a similar way.
Similar way. It's not exactly the same, so it could be interesting where we go with this.
I
I
hope
think
so.
we'll still be friends at the end, but that's the whole point, is to discuss what your take is on some of the elements of PQ, and how a salesperson can apply those, what can they do to
Yeah.
be conscious and deliberate in bringing that into the way they sell. Because I know we are on the same page when it's that sort of more collaborative selling process is the way we need to operate. So let's jump off. Enough from
Sure.
me. That's all about. I want to hear what you got to say. Let's start with trust. Yeah. So trust is one of the elements of PQ. Anyone who listens to this regularly knows I always start on this because for me it's the foundation of all relationships. It's how we communicate better. It's such an important area. So over to you. What do you think as a salesperson, or how can a salesperson embrace this?
Okay. I think the first thing I want to be clear is that any ideas or opinions I offer are mine. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else. And the second point is that everything I say, as in the book, comes from experience. It's not because I've read a textbook and thought that was a cool idea. As I said in the book, everything I talk about, I've either done it, or it's been done to me, or I was sitting next to the guy when it hit him. So
Brilliant.
I've had a front row seat in selling for best part of 40 years. So what you'll get is from the heart and backed up by experience rather than lots and lots of academic research. So trust to me is one of those things that is absolutely vital if you want to be successful in corporate sales and in person to person or business to consumer sales as well. And trust to me is the same as believability. And because if somebody doesn't believe you, they're not going to trust you. And so to be believable, you have to kind of do what you say you're going to do and not promise something you can't deliver, because that's the fastest way to destroy any trust or credibility. If I say to you, Fred, I'll definitely get that done for you by tomorrow, and 2 weeks later, I haven't even responded and you're still chasing me, are you going to trust me? Do you believe me when I tell you the next thing? Well, you might give me one more shot at it, but you're not going to give me 3. So I think it is absolutely vitally important that people recognize that if you're going to be believable and trusted, you have to do what you say you're going to do. And we all know, or I've found out, that there are times when you've said something in the best possible faith, but you get to a point in the sales cycle where, guess what? Something's changed. You can't actually do it anymore. So, or something else has happened that prevents you from giving the customer exactly what you said. At that point, many people would say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I'll just let it go. I'll wait until the end and we'll see what happens. My view is no. You stop right there. You get in touch with the customer and say, look, here's the circumstances. This is what's changed. This is why it's changed. And this is what I'm going to do about it. And even if it's the sort of most extreme version of that, where actually you have to pull out of the deal, and I've had to do that. If you have to do that, then it's better to do that, in my view, and keep the guy's trust rather than take a short-term win, you think, for the sake of getting that short-term win. Because the next time when he comes to deal with you and he remembers that you let him down because you didn't tell him something was about to happen, then he's not going to trust you. And sometimes actually saying, no, we can't do that, even though you've said yes initially because things have changed, is the right thing to do, because that maintains the trust, because that's the thing that's the thread that takes you through your life and takes you through sustainable, buildable, profitable relationships with a customer. And without that, I'm not saying you can't sell or you shouldn't sell, but I think you're going to find it a lot harder to do that than if you actually are open, honest, and straight with people from the start and stay that way all the way through.
Love it. No, it is a thread, and it's the thread which runs through all of the elements of PQ
Yeah.
that we're going to be talking
Yeah.
about now.
Yeah.
But actually, I love what you said there, which is when you just say, look, this is what has changed, this is why it's changed, and this is what we're going to do about it. It's actually pretty simple, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
break it down, when you said that, that's really obvious. Why don't people do that more often then? Because we know that salespeople don't always do it.
Yeah. Well, I think they do it because they're afraid of the rejection. They're afraid that the customer might say, well, we can't live with that. Well, they might say that, and you say, okay, well, what can you live with?
Yeah.
Okay, we've had to make this change. I know it's impacted you. I know it's not what we said initially, but how can we work out a way around this together?
Yeah.
And so suddenly, actually, you've moved from a situation where it's potentially confrontational to where it's openly collaborative, because the customer thinks, okay, well, this guy's actually working for me now. He's not just trying to mask something that's happened in his organization or to try and do something that only benefits him. He's actually working with me and for me to try and get me around this problem, because he knows it's a problem and he's been open and honest about that. Therefore, I'll work around it, because maybe we can't do exactly what he said they can do, but we might be able to do something else that still works.
Yeah. No, I like it, and to we'll talk about future in a little bit in the future, a little bit later, but to predict like this is what's going to happen. Let's start talking about this now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not pretend that it might be okay. It's not going to be. Those changes, have happened, will happen. What are we going to do about it? And confrontational to collaborative.
Mm.
It's in some ways it is pretty simple if you've got the right mindset, and
Yes.
that isn't as simple, is it?
No, and it takes courage. I mean, it's sometimes quite difficult to go into a meeting with, particularly with senior executives, and say, you know what, guys, we screwed up.
Yeah.
We've dropped the ball here. But I'm going to get it back, and here's how I want to do it, and I need your help to do it. Can we work together on this? That's actually very powerful. Whereas hiding it and walking away is not powerful at all. It's going to blow up in your face, just not that day, but some other day.
It is, and I don't know if anybody's ever got an example of when they went with that tactic and weren't caught out. I'd love to hear it, because it doesn't work like that, does it? It's just delaying the inevitable, I think.
Yeah, you might find that you've got far enough away from the blast zone that it doesn't actually kill you, but it's still going to impact you, and the customer will still remember.
Or put someone else in the firing line. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it makes a lot of sense. No, I like that. I love that. I mean, it does it speaks about, and let's sort of move on to the next element. And I mean, we go through these elements sequentially. Clearly, they are all linked. The element of this win-win orientation, because
Yes.
that's what we're thinking about. Is we're in this together. We're looking for mutual benefit. So I mean, I guess you're just going to carry on elaborating on your thinking around how we can do that.
It's interesting. Win-win is one of those phrases that's ever so easy to spit out, and it's like risk reward, and everybody wants risk reward until they're the ones that are taking the risk and the other guy's getting the reward. It's like Charlie Brown said, it doesn't matter if you win or lose until you lose. So I think win-win is one of those, nice things to have, but it's actually really, really difficult to get in reality, because, sorry, my nose has done what it always does in these situations. It's gone mad. It's like when I go to the dentist, it starts tickling. Because everyone's idea of what's a win is different. And a win for the customer and a win for you may not be the same thing, but they have to be of equal weight and equal value to both parties for it to move forward. And that requires the aforementioned trust, that if you say to the customer, I can help you get this win, but I really need you to do this for me. And he says, yeah, I'll do that. And then you get to the thing where you've delivered and he's got what he wants. And you say, remember that little favor I asked you for? And he goes, oh, no, we can't do that now. No, we forgot about that. No, thanks very much. It's been nice talking to you. That's not a good, that's a bad outcome. So, and it works the other way around too. So that to try and get there, you really need to have that level of trust, that level of openness and transparency, and accept that your idea of what is a win for you isn't necessarily what the customer's idea is of a win for you or a win for him. So it's being, if you like, magnanimous enough or big enough to recognize there are two separate wins here, and they're not necessarily connected at the win stage, but they allow both parties to emerge claiming victory, even though it's not victory over you or you having victory over them. You've met your objectives for your company as a seller. The customer has met his objectives for his company as the buyer. Those are both wins, but it doesn't have to be the same win. But it's very easy to describe, it's very easy to talk about, but it is monumentally difficult because to achieve in practice, because invariably, as you move through the transaction together, things start to wobble and wibble around on both sides, and people come under, sales guys come under pressure, customers come under pressure, and then the objectives start to shake and move around a little bit. And that's where the trust and the transparency come in to try and make sure you still have a winnable objective. It might not be the original one, but it's still a winnable one that's of value and weight to both parties.
Yeah, no, I like it. And you use people. And the bigger sale, more people are going to be involved.
Yeah.
In fact, more people are involved now anyway. If you look at
Yeah.
the data on that, it's saying that more and more people in the decision-making units. So that gives it another dynamic that's hard to manage. They've all got different objectives. They're all interested in different stuff, trying to achieve different things.
Yeah.
So I want to. So you use the word transparency, and interestingly, that's what I now tend to call the original element of self-disclosure and feedback. I think some people define transparency slightly differently, but for me, that's what transparency is, and that's what you were starting to touch on. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, and we'll come back to the interdependence thing in a sec.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things that everyone talks about. I will be totally transparent with you. Yeah. Okay. So there was a trend in the 80s for open book accounting, when if you, particularly in the construction industry, when the customer would look over your books and say, "Oh, you're paying how much for that?" and that's fine up to a point, but there comes a time when you have to kind of ring fence those things that you can't be transparent about, because they're confidential to you, they're confidential to other customers, and there are some things you simply are not able to disclose for various reasons. I think what you have to do is, for those things that are within the sphere of influence and the sphere of concern of the customer, to use the Covey terms, you have to be as transparent as you possibly can be. And that doesn't mean telling them everything. It means telling them everything they need to know, when they need to know it, and in a way that they can act upon. And I think back to my early career, when I was sent out as a young quality assurance engineer to go and vet a supply company to the people I worked for, and they were late in delivery, some crucial component for manufacturing, and I was very young, very wet behind the ears, and I naively said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. We couldn't have used the parts anyway because there was a problem in manufacturing." And I thought nothing of it until a week later, and the manufacturing manager came and almost literally gave me a smack in the teeth. Said, "Why did you tell them that? We had them over the barrel. We wanted them, and you've gone and told them." I went, "Oh shit, sorry." So it's like, I don't know what the transparency equivalent is of trust but verify. It's be transparent, but not don't lift the whole kimono.
Yeah, that's exactly the expression. No, I love that. I mean, interestingly, Steve Dent, who sort of the originator, or the guy that I always associate with PQ, partner skills, I mean, he talks about self-disclosure of giving information about yourself, because
Yes.
this is about building the relationship, and talking about these are the things that I need from it, which I think sometimes salespeople find difficult, but also feedback to the other party. So it's often, again, the short version is saying to a customer, "Look, you said we're going to work on this together, but you're not doing your part." I think some salespeople find that very difficult. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree that it is very difficult, because the problem is that most salespeople will say it exactly like that. And an immediate response is, "Oh, really? What do you mean we're giving you a problem? No, we're doing everything fine." So you have to kind of find a way to soften the language and to soften the message a little bit. And just, it's hard to do it without giving a specific example, but certainly that phrase that you used, and I know you gave it as an example, but that kind of mentality is, "You're not holding up your end of the bargain," is probably not in a British, certainly British American business culture, probably isn't going to get you very far. You have to go and say, "Look, I know we said we do this, but I've got a little bit of a problem and things aren't quite working out on my end. Is this something you could help me with?" And it may well be they don't actually realize that they're not holding up at their end of the bargain. The intention might be there, but they don't realize, and just say, "I'm not sure if you're aware, but so and so and so and so haven't done this, and it was due 2 weeks ago, and I've had a bit of a kicking about it, but is there any chance you could," and I know it sounds a bit sort of, hand wringing and all the rest of it, but you do have to find a way to get people on board with you rather than getting their backs up. But
Yeah.
I think that's the bit that a lot of salespeople have a challenge with. They either go in too hard or they go in way too soft, and the guy goes, "Well, what was all that? What was all that about?
Yeah.
We're doing everything we should do." And I think that's where, in some ways, modern technology can help, because if you've got systems that are being used by both parties, and there are clear milestones and indicators in the system that things, a warning light's gone off somewhere. "Oh, the dashboard's just gone red. Why is that?"
Yeah.
"Oh, it's because, oh shit, we haven't done our bit." And I think you could then phone the customer and say, "Look, the dashboard's gone red on this particular measure. Could you have a look at it for me?" You're not pointing the finger. You just said, "Here's a piece of information. Can you do something about it? Because it's relevant, but he might not know." So you give them the chance to come back and say, "Oh shit, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we didn't get that done. I've spoken to the plant manager. He's getting on it now. It'll be fixed by the end of the day."
Yeah.
And if you've got that kind of open and collaborative and trusting relationship, you can have those conversations, and they don't have to be smack you in the teeth, "You failed again. I'm going to shoot you next time," sort of thing.
Yeah. No, you set up to do that, and a good salesperson can do it.
Yes.
So I'll monitor the situation. I will keep us on track. So
Yes.
it's going to be that I'll have to give my side a bit of a kick. I might have to come back to you guys.
Yeah.
Get that agreement early.
Yeah.
And then for me, that's where mutual action plans or outcome enablement plans.
Exactly.
I know one of our colleagues prefers them to be called that, and
Yes.
it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you are trying to enable the outcome.
Yes.
If we're using that to monitor, then it kind of makes it a little bit more objective, doesn't it? It's just that is something that needs to be done. And it was your name against it, Ian.
Well, exactly. And my sort of golden rule is that I will always put in more than I get out, and deliberately so. And I will sometimes highlight things to people that we've missed it, but they haven't noticed, because I want them to feel that they can come to me openly and say, "This isn't quite what we wanted or quite where we expected it to be. Can you do something about it?" Because that earns me the right to go back and have exactly that conversation with them. If I'm defensive about it and say, "Oh no, we're fine. You've got it wrong," then it puts the whole thing on edge. And I think, again, Fred, it comes right back to that word trust. I said I was going to do it. Am I doing it?
Yeah, no, and it makes total sense. And again, we see how all these elements come together, because if I move us into the next one, which is about being comfortable with interdependence, again, it makes even more sense that is why we're doing it like this. And as a salesperson, I'll take the lead on it. But ultimately, my success is going to be linked to your success, and likewise. So again, we're starting to touch on some of these. Are there any other things we could bear in mind when we talk about interdependence?
Yes, I think it's interdependence and mutual dependence. I mean, there are events and outcomes that are dependent on each other. You can't do this until I've done that. That's fine. That's if you like, a sequential thing.
Yeah.
Then there's the mutual dependence of the success or the prestige, or whatever, of the individuals concerned, that says we both have to make this happen. This isn't just a question about you do your bit and I'm going to kick you if you don't. I'll do my bit, and then you'll never hear from me again. If there's a mutual dependence, then the interdependence becomes absolutely essential. I'll give you a little example of this. Many years ago, I was selling a lot of electrical products, insulation, cabling, all that kind of stuff to the offshore oil industry. Yeah. And back in the day when they were building offshore oil rigs, the way they used to do it was they would build it onshore, and then they'd build all the modules, and they'd do all the cabling offshore. Obviously difficult, dangerous environment. So what they did was they took a modular approach. They built all the modules, cabled them up all internally, then they joined it all up offshore. But that meant that the cable joints were exposed out in the North Sea. And to do that, they have to be certified to many safety standards and all the rest of it. And the company I worked for had developed such a cable joint. And we were working with a contractor who was building a rig, and they wanted to use this. And it was the first time they'd done it. And it was the first time this joint would have been used in the North Sea. And I said, great, we'll get that done for you. And they said, okay, when can we have it? And I got in touch with her. I was the sales guy stroke product manager for this thing at the time. And I got in touch with the people who made it, which was our factory in Germany, and said, when can we have it? And of course, I got the Germanic answer, which was, it'll be 12 weeks. I said, no, they need it sooner than that. No, it will be 12 weeks. And I said, okay, well, we're going to have to get around this somehow, fellas, because if it's 12 weeks, that's 3 weeks' time they have lost. And the cost to them of not operating in the North Sea is $100,000 a week. And there's by the way, there's a consequential damages clause in the contract. So if you'd really like to pay $300,000 to them to take an extra 3 weeks, that's fine. I'd rather we didn't. So in the end, what we did was I went back to the contract and said, okay, this is going to be a challenge. This is going to go down to the wire. We can do it in 9. You said 8, but we can do it in 9, and I can guarantee you we can do it in 9. Can you live with that? There was a long silence.
Yeah.
And eventually they came back and said, yeah, we can do that. And I said, fine. Okay, let's do that. Because we both mutually depended on it. They couldn't do their bit until we'd done our bit. But the key thing was not the provision of the product, it was the provision of the certification. And it was a certification that we had to hurry up with the certification authorities in Germany. As I'm sure you can imagine, they don't move quickly for anybody.
It's going to be
we worked around it. Oh, and by the way, I did get a 10% premium for delivering early.
Cool. Oh no, it's interesting actually, mutual and interdependence. But yeah, we're in it together. Yes. And again, the salesperson's mindset for me, it has to be, that's how we've got to be thinking.
Yes.
Because I know this is a big one for you, isn't it? You know, if you're in it for yourself, your own company, your approach is it's going to be, well, it's just not going to work anymore. It's too old fashioned. Yeah. But I think sometimes we're going to go a bit sort of too native. I don't know if that's the right expression, but you kind of go too customer centric, if that makes sense. Not customer centric, wrong word, but go too much on customer's side. And again, you're not doing your own company any favors. So you've got to strike the balance to get that right, haven't you?
It is, and that balance hinges on that mutual interdependency seesaw.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Right then, next one, change. Comfort with change. Change in sales. Yeah, let's talk about change.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic because it's the one thing that most people are most resistant to. They don't want things to change. I changed my view about change when I moved into the world of software development and agile software development, where change is absolutely core to the success of agile, because you expect things to change, you manage to change, you embrace the change, you want the change, and it dramatically changes the whole dynamic of developing software. And so my view changed about being resistant to it, to saying, reality is, fellas, everything is going to change at some point. For some reason, some of them we can see now, Some of them we can make a reasonable guess that, yes, that is not likely to stay the way it is. Other things are just going to come up from behind you and hit you in the back of the head, and you won't even know it's landed until you fall in your face. We have to have a way with dealing with all of those. We have to have a system, we have to have a process, we have to have technology, but most of all, we have to have the mindset that says, if somebody has requested a change, it's for a reason. And we assess that reason and its urgency and its importance and its, most importantly, its impact. And then we decide what we're going to do about it. And the thing that tipped the balance in software development, and I think tips the balance everywhere else when you start talking about things changing, is this concept of impact assessment. If I'm building something and I change the color of the paint on a tiny little component that's nobody's ever going to see, what's the impact of that? Well, probably not that great, right? But if I change the engineering structure of some very important component, that means that it's actually got to be redesigned, or its load can't be what it used to be, then that's important, and you have to understand what that impact is. And the problem with change in the past was that people didn't have the ability to assess that impact other than by changing it and going, oh, that didn't work.
Oh,
Well, that oil rig fell over.
then?
Oh, that didn't work. Let's not do that. So what you try and do is to have systems that allow you to assess the impact. And that means you need all those requirements and all those things interconnected. And if you can do that collaboratively, right? If a customer calls you and says, you said, I said that we wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and we wanted you to build it this way. And you go, yep, fine. We've had to have a change because this has happened with our client. We now need to make this change. What are we going to do about it? And you go, hang on a minute. Tappity, tappity, tap. Okay, well, that's connected to that, and that's connected to that. If that changes, change. Yeah, we can do that. 2 weeks. It'll cost you $10,000. Instead of, oh, no, sorry, no, you get no chance. That'll never happen. Or, yeah, we can do it, but we haven't a clue how it's going to work. And it's getting that control over the change process and the change mechanism, the change tools, and the impact of the change that allows you to embrace the change and say, actually, this is good.
And that can be passed on to the customer then, because
Yes.
we know how humans respond to change. We don't like it, we panic, it's the unknown, etc. So, well, actually, I've done my bit here. Let me talk you through what the impact actually is, what it looks like, why it's going to be like this. And you can be quite calming, I guess, and you can sort of help people. In some ways, it is a change, yes, but it's not a very big one.
Yeah.
We can take people through that kind of the reaction to change faster because they can understand it and sort of take it on board far quicker, can't they?
Yeah, and that's particularly useful when you're talking about things like software applications, because a lot of the modeling tools and the simulation tools now are so powerful. You can make that change on the fly and say, well, this is what it will now look like. They go, yeah, that's fine. But if you hold that back and then slip it in afterwards and then you deliver the product and the guy goes, well, hang on a minute, that's not what we asked for. You've changed it. Oh yeah, because it's better, but it's not what I wanted. So now you've got a confrontation as opposed to, look, we've looked at this. We think if we do it this way, it'll actually work better for you because it'll impact beneficially all these other things. And you show it to them. You go, oh yeah, that's right. Now, obviously, that's a wee bit harder to do when you've got an engineered product and you're cutting metal and bolting and welding things together. But there are still simulation tools out there that will allow you to do that. And getting the customer's input to that change and the impact of that change. And when it comes from you to them and from them to you, that is absolutely vital. And them having the trust, come back to that trust word again.
Back to trust again. It's a whole 3 minutes since you last said it,
I'm slipping. If you go back to that and they trust that when you've said that we can change this and they've seen that it can be done, they say, yeah, that's okay. We know it's going to cost money. We'll pay you the extra 10,000 or whatever. Then that's fine. That's still a mutually beneficial win-win for everybody, rather than a fight with the lawyers at the end when you say, well, we're not paying for that because you've changed it.
Yeah, mutually beneficial. We're in this together. I'm doing it with best intent.
Yeah.
All of the good stuff we've been speaking about so far.
Yeah.
Which does just move us on to the last element, or another of the elements, if you like. That I don't like talking about them as sequential, if you like, but future orientation. You actually did touch on it earlier, because again, it's almost impossible to talk about one of the elements without touching on one of the others. But a good salesperson will have a good future orientation.
Hmm.
Again, thoughts on that?
Well, my first kind of knee-jerk thought to that is something that was beaten into me heavily early on in my days in software sales was don't sell futures. Sell what you have today, because if you say something that's going to come in the future, you know what? The customer's going to say, that's fine, I'll wait for that. And we can't afford them to wait. We need them to buy now. So there was a self-interest there in not thinking too far ahead. So the counter argument to that is you say, well, this is the product as it is today. And I know it only meets 90% of your needs, but within the next 12 months, here's our development plan. This is what the future will look like. And if you don't see what you're looking for today, let's get it into the development plan and we'll build it in. Yeah. So that's when that future orientation is helpful. The other time it's helpful is when you can see the customer's about to do something and invest in something, whether it's something you've bought, you sell, or whether it's something else he's done, and you say to him, you know what, if I was you, I would think slightly differently about that, because I happen to know that something is coming in the market. It might be a regulatory change that they haven't heard about. Did you realize there's a new version of X coming out? And if you go down that route now, you're going to find it very difficult to get past X because you have to. Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you. So you do have to have that future view. And the third place where you really need the future view, and to me, the absolute most important, is the future relationship. If you just want to do transactional business, one transaction at a time, and you don't care what happens in the future, your behavior will be very different. But if what you see is the first transaction being the one that sets you up for the next one, and a good relationship over time, then that is a very important future view to have, because once you have that, you then become part of the customer's journey as well as your own journey. They can come on your journey with you, and you go in their journey with them. And have I said trust in the last 3 minutes?
No, I was getting a little bit worried.
So that also helps build that trust, because they can then decide, these guys seem pretty good. They're open, they're honest, they're transparent. They've done everything they've said they're going to do. Should we now align what we're doing on their technology and their capabilities and their people, because we think that's where we want to be, and they've shown themselves to be pretty good so far. So let's hitch our wagon to that horse. And that means that you now have a sustainable, valuable relationship where the customer is consistently getting value. And that's something you don't have to then defend against predators, because they're already happy with you. And that future view then is very important. Now, you have to accept equally that can change. That's why the flexibility around the change can happen. And if you break that trust, then absolutely it's going to change. It's going to stop, bam, like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those things, Fred, they're all to me, they're all part of the molecular structure, all bonded together. You take one out, and you might as well take them all out.
It doesn't. We have to speak in sequence, but you can't talk about one without mentioning the other. And as you said, you did call it at the beginning. Trust is threaded all the way through. It's threaded through the whole of selling, whole relationship. All of these elements, it kind of ties them in. And if you can do as we've been doing here, thinking about it consciously, doing things deliberately, it puts just a different aspect, different veneer on your selling, I think.
Yeah, and it's, in a way, it's not actually about the sales technique or the sales method or the sales process that you use. It is fundamentally about the mindset and the attitude. And that's why in my book, I say the most important quality for a salesperson is humility, because you've got to be humble enough to ask the customer when you don't know, and to be humble enough to learn from other people and recognize you don't know it all. And the fact that you don't know it all is actually a positive thing, not a negative thing. And, all of these things, people just tend to look at it as well, we're following this method and that's the way we do things. or, you know, we're only interested in quarter by quarter or month by month. We don't care about anything. As long as we've got a big pipeline, it doesn't matter. It does matter. But you can only deliver on it mattering if you have the right mindset.
Yeah, agreed 100%. That is an excellent place to wind up on. Apart from me asking, how can people find you? Where can they get in touch?
Well, the simplest way is through my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
You know, my email address is up there, my phone number is up there. Just send me a connection request or any way like that. That's fine.
We'll drop that in the show notes, and I'll encourage
sure.
people to connect with you. If you
please do.
mention that you've heard them on this.
Absolutely,
No, I will, because you put out lots and lots of stuff. Thoughtful, as you have been in this, and really generous. I mean, you're either writing another book or you're sharing the original, because you're giving so much content out.
It's a bit of both.
Or a bit of
it's a bit of both.
This is the whole point getting you on. I wanted this question answered.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. If in the book, when I stopped working, I wanted to write this book, and a lot of people said to me, "You should write this book because we love the war stories you tell." I mean, is it Mike Adams talks about 7 stories? I probably got 700, but they're war stories, and people always go, "Yeah, that's a really good example. I never thought of that," because they're all real. It's all based on experience. So I thought, well, I don't want to just write a book about my life, because that's just boring as hell. How can I transfer some of this experience to the next generation and to the current generation? So I thought, I know, I'll structure it as 20 questions. So the subtitle of the book is all the things you ever wanted to know about sales but couldn't be arsed to ask. and because of the things that, had I known I didn't know them, I would have asked about them, but I didn't know them.
Yeah.
So, and I stumbled over most of them, and I got into sales. It was completely unintentional. I never intended to be a sales guy. I just woke up one morning and thought, oh shit, I gotta go and see a customer in half an hour, and they expect me to sell them something. How the hell am I going to do that? So the book answers 20 questions. And when I started the Substack articles, and a lot of what I say on LinkedIn can be tied back into one of those chapters. But what I'm trying to do now is go beyond that. So very soon you will see me starting to put out feelers for what other questions would people like answered? What have I not covered? And so I'm probably now 95% of down the road of having covered all the content in the Unintentional Salesman book, and a few other things I've thought of along the way. But pretty soon I'm going to have to put up the white flag and say, help. Is there anything else out there that people want, an experienced eye to comment on before I start off on another rant?
We like both of them. I'm going to give you a suggestion and then provoke a rant. Two for the price of one.
Sure.
No, and honestly, I really am enjoying the Unintentional Salesman meets series. They're so cool. They're right from my inbox. I'm like, oh, good. I literally put them aside. I'll sit and read that with a cup of tea later. I actually do. Thank you so much for.
I got the idea for the title from the 1 Minute Manager series, the 1 Minute Manager Meets. I thought, how can I take this persona and kind of make it a third party person, but give it some form of continuity.
But we know it is really. Nah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and it's been really good fun, and I've enjoyed it and learned a lot about EQ.